What are some of your options for managing street sweeping materials? We took a closer look at this question at the Enhanced Street Sweeping 101 workshop on May 30th, 2024. This is a recording of that presentation brought to you by the Clean Sweep program, which is a partnership between the University of Minnesota Water Resources Center, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, Minnesota Sea Grant, and the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council.
So Lena and Paula did a fantastic job of covering some of the research that's gone into what is in these street sweeping materials. And the big picture is that we still don't know everything, but what we do know is this. So we have three basic materials in the street sweeping materials. It's trash, it's organic matter like the leaves and the sticks. It is the minerals, the sands, silts, and clays. And through all of the research that has been done, we know that the amount of road traffic you have doesn't matter as much as some other things when we're thinking about higher concentrations of metals and organics in these materials. So what really matters is land use intensity. So as that increases, you're going to have those higher concentrations of metals and organics, along with like the particle size. When the particle size gets smaller, the same thing happens. So PAHs are a little bit variable. And the mineral or the material characterization, like I said, the research is limited. Paula and I are going to be working with Coon Creek Watershed District to get a little bit more information. We are trying to dig into some of these bigger questions that people have brought up to us. We have questions about microplastics and what is in street sweeping materials. We have questions about PFAS. We have questions about just these particle sizes. Like, what are we seeing? When are we going to be concerned about minerals and when are we not? So we're still doing research, but we do know some things. So before you do separating and composting, there are some things to be concerned about. So if you just look at those raw street sweeping materials, one of the things that people look at is the metals. Now, typically, now this is not in all circumstances, but typically your metals are going to be below the levels of concern in those raw materials. Your lightweight organics, including those oils, they're typically going to be elevated above the levels of concern. Your heavy organics, they're also going to be elevated, and we're talking about those PAHs. And then road salt, again, in those raw materials, they're going to be below the levels of concern. But after you're sorting, you're using your trommel screen or a vibrating screen to sort out some of the mineral materials from those organics and trash. After you do that, your metals, of course, are still going to be below the levels of concern. But your lightweight organics, those oils, those are going to drop below. So they're going to be okay. Your heavy organics, what the research is telling us is that it's still kind of going to remain unchanged. And then the road salt is one of those things that we're going to dive into with additional research. So there are some things that we do know, and there's some things that we don't. But there are steps that you can take as far as best practices on what to do with these materials, how to manage them, and how to reuse them. So one of the biggest questions is, like, are street sweepings considered solid waste? Now, the MPCA has come up with a document. It's now over a decade old, but it has information on it. So if you just have those raw materials, that is considered solid waste. It's classified as industrial solid waste. You're going to have to dispose of it in a landfill. And it can be expensive. We see these prices rising every single year. Now, if you screen them out, again, with a trommel screener, vibrating screen, whatever, it's no longer considered solid waste. You're going to have to dispose of those trashes into a landfill still. But there is some things that you should test for, though. So it's not just automatically considered okay. Now, the guidance on this is somewhat slightly vague. But if you have street sweeping material from like a spill site, hazardous waste cleanup sites, parking lots where you know that there's some of those old sealants or contamination and other known contaminated areas, obviously you should definitely test. But you should also consider testing if there is a site that is suspected to be contaminated. So just kind of using your common sense with this. Again, the guidance is a little bit vague, but you should definitely be testing if it's a known or suspected contaminated site. And as far as reusing the materials, there is information in your packet. There's this one that the Clean Sweep program has come out with, just on some of the different reuse options, along with the commonly asked questions on the back. Also in your packet, and it'll be dropped in the chat as well, is that MPCA guidance document that I had mentioned. That gives you all you need to know and what we have right now for guidance on how to manage these street sweeping materials. Now, once you screen those materials, a lot of folks are using it for those winter road applications. So mixing those materials with your salt and sand mixes, using those for winter road applications. You can also use it as alternative daily cover, like Paula had mentioned, taking it to the landfill. Hopefully they give you a discounted rate. And then you can also use it for project material. So we're talking about fill dirt, subgrade material, aggregate for concrete or asphalt. And then what's left, of course, is that organic material. So you can use it to compost it, which is what most folks do. You can also do the waste to energy. So burning those woody debris or leaves for electric energy. So there's something that you shouldn't do. Again, this is kind of common sense, but you should avoid placing any of these materials in areas that have regular human contact. So we're talking playgrounds, we're talking residential areas, athletic fields. You don't want to use it in any of those areas. You also don't want to use it in any areas that can contaminate groundwater. So near your drinking water wells, wellhead protection areas, or sites with karst features like caves and that sort of thing. So just avoid it in these areas. And then once you have these materials, there are certain things that you have to follow. So there is separation distances. You have to keep it 200 feet from a water body. So, and that can be lakes, rivers, streams. That also includes your wetlands and your karst features again. You want to keep this at least 3 feet minimum away from your groundwater resources, 3 feet away from fractured breadwalk, and then 50 feet from potable water supplies. And then if you have this fill and this cover, you need to seed it. So within 7 days on slopes that are 3-to-1, 14 days on slopes that are a little bit less steep, from 10-to-1 to 3-to-1, and 21 days on slopes that are 10-to-1 or less than 10-to-1. So just some general know-how and guidance for that. But it's really just common sense. Now, one of the things that we get asked a lot is what's your typical cost estimates? And when we did our workshop in St. Cloud last fall, they gave us all of their costs, which you can also use to reference from what Paula was saying before. But in your packet, there is this cost benefit summary. Thank you to Noah Check, who came up with this from the city of St. Cloud. On the back of it, lists the unscreened sweepings disposal cost estimate. So if you're wondering, how much does this cost? This is kind of a nice little breakdown. It gives you an idea of what this might entail. But there are a lot of different reuse options, and we will be having a reuse lunch and learn in July. So we're going to bring different people that are doing different things with materials reuse, and we're going to be discussing all the different options, coming up with new ideas, and trying to figure out if there's something else that we can do with them. If there's some missed opportunity that we could do better with coordination. Sometimes you just don't have enough fill to make it desirable for somebody to come and grab that. So what if we pooled our resources, did that together? Could there be more reuse options that we're not looking at? So come to the July Lunch and Learn if you want to discuss that more, learn more about reuse and how to manage these materials better, more cost effectively, and potentially do it together.
If you would like more information on enhanced street sweeping or are looking for tools and resources to implement this in your own communities, please visit us on our website or contact us at one of the email addresses on the screen. Thanks and happy sweeping.